안녕하세요, 로아비 과학 담당 제이프 강사입니다. In this video, I will share a few tips on how to write the exploration section of experiment-based IAs. So first, you have your research question, which is usually written in the format of what is the effect of IV on DV, or how does IV affect DV? Okay, so this will be your IV. This is your DV. And then you will describe how you measured or quantified your DV. Okay, so method of measurement. Okay, so for example, what is the effect of temperature? So temperature is obviously our IV here. And then you want to state the range. So for us, it's 10 to 50. Degrees Celsius is our unit. Always specify your units. On rate of hydrolysis of starch by the enzyme amylase, but alpha amylase, not just any amylase, but alpha. You want to specify the type of enzyme used. Measured in terms of the time taken. So time taken here would be our DV. For the reaction mixture to change color from blue, black to colorless. So when you're writing your RQ, be as detailed as possible. Okay? Add in all of the information that you need, right, to describe your experiment. Right? So IV, DV, units, values, everything should go in. Okay. Then personal engagement. Now with personal engagement, it could either be written as a separate section or weaved into your background information. But here what you want to discuss is what sparked your curiosity in the topic. So like, why are you writing about this topic? Right? What got you interested in the first place? Right? And on top of that, how will this affect real life situations? Or how will the data from your experiment help solve real life situations? Next, background information. When you're writing your IA, there are two important things that you need to remember. First, your IA is an official scientific report. And so you should be as objective as possible. And there's no place for pronouns like I's and me's and mine's in your IA. Second, you should always visualize a person with no scientific background reading your IA. A well-written IA should be easy to follow and easy to understand by that very person with no scientific background. But for him to understand what you're writing about in your IA, you need to kind of provide a bit of information. Okay? So for us, for example, our RQ was the effect of temperature on the rate of hydrolysis of starch. Okay? And so first, you're going to have to discuss what an enzyme is. Okay? What does it do? Okay? Which factors affect enzymatic activity? Right? So if, for example, for us, it was temperature, right? Okay? So you want to pay a little bit more attention on temperature. Okay? Compared to all the others, you can put a graph in. Okay? Then what's the function of amylase? What does it do? How does it hydrolyze starch? Okay. Then you want to sort of move on to what the aim of this investigation is. What is the purpose of this investigation? Describe the main reaction. Okay. How does starch react with iodine? Why is there a color change from blue, black to colorless? Right. And then a very important section that you want to add to your background information is a reference to other scientists who carried out what experiment, what data was obtained. And then you can kind of sort of reason and say, since experiments carried out by these scientists output such and such data, in my experiment I plan to, and the predicted results are as follows. Okay. For the hypothesis, you want to word it in the format of if IV changes in a certain manner, then DV will as explanation. So for example, if temperature increases, now remember temperature is our IV, then rate of starch hydrolysis by alpha amylase will increase as the explanation. So first, more reactant particles will have energy levels greater than or equal to the activation energy. And two, frequency of collisions per unit time will increase. Thus, the time taken for color change, RDV, will decrease. It is always better visually to list your control variables in a table. Now, always remember to number and label all tables and figures. Okay? Then you want to sort of move on to what the aim of this investigation is. What is the purpose of this investigation? Table labels should be in bold and italics positioned above the table as shown, whereas figure labels are positioned below the diagrams in italics. List all variables which need to be controlled and explain why the respective variables needed to be controlled. Now you also need to add how the listed variables were controlled. For example, in our experiment using amylase, since alpha amylase from different producers may have differing rates of enzymatic activity, we state that for each and every trial conducted, all of the amylase used in the experiment was from the same chemical company. And as shown in the table, the concentration of the amylase solution, 1%, is also stated. If you can, and if allowed, it's a good idea to conduct prelim trials as it will enable you to test out and finalize the various steps in your procedure. Quite often, experiments do not go as predicted, and sometimes the procedures need to be altered accordingly. Also, this is a section in which you justify all the quantities of reagents used and why the stated range of IV was used in the experiments. For example, you could state that initially you wanted to test temperatures between 30 to 80 degrees, but as the desired color change did not take place at temperatures beyond 40 degrees, the range was lowered to 10 to 50 degrees in increments of 10 degrees. In addition, mixing of all reagent solutions in a single beaker was initially planned. However, as reaction mixture started to change color during the addition of various reagents to the beaker, the procedure was altered to such and such. Now for methodology, there are three main parts that need to be written up. First up, materials and apparatus. In this part, list all the materials and apparatus used in the experiment. Specify required amounts of materials, required numbers, size, and uncertainties of the respective apparatus. It's not enough to just write measuring cylinder, because there's various sizes of measuring cylinders. So state what size was used, how many was used. Also, when selecting your apparatus, pay attention to the size. Are you using the right size for the given measurement? For example, using a 500 cubic centimeter beaker to measure 50 cubic centimeters of distilled water will result in very high uncertainties. So instead, use a 50 cubic centimeter pipette. Also, take photos of the apparatus you use in the experiments so that when the time comes for you to write up the IA, you can refer to your photos to complete the uncertainties. Don't ever think you'll be able to remember, because I can guarantee you won't. As for your procedure, be as detailed as you can. When writing your procedure, imagine that you're instructing an elementary school student. If he's struggling to follow your instructions, your procedure is not detailed enough. State exactly what needs to be done using which apparatus. For example, don't just write measure start solution, because there's like a million ways I can measure start solution. So instead, write measure 5 cubic centimeters of 1% starch solution using a 5 cubic centimeter measuring cylinder. Lastly, Regarding your safety and environmental considerations, identify potential hazards. What is the nature of the hazard? And what are the necessary precautions and control measures which need to be taken? Write this section based on the material safety and data sheets specific to the compounds used in your IA, as shown in Table 3 below. So for example, for our experiment, iodine solution is a potential hazard. It can cause irritation of the eye, and therefore you must wear lab goggles, gloves. Okay? Always use the lowest concentrations possible. And upon contact, immediately flush the area with large volumes of cold running water for around 10 minutes. Okay? And in this section, you also need to refer to the material safety data sheets. So here you put in your in-text reference. This brings us to the end of this video on the exploration section of experiment-based IAs. Write your IA as if you're writing for a person with no science background. Concisely, using the correct terminology, but with all the necessary information. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all soon.